I want to die. What's up? It's Toad, back with you. Shockingly, I am still here on planet Earth after yesterday. Maybe I shouldn't be. I'm going to talk some more sports, but why the hell would anybody listen to me at this point? Started out 2-1 yesterday. Decent start to the baseball season until baseball wound up going 2-3 yesterday. And I didn't win another play the rest of the day. Wound up going 2-7? I don't even know what it was. Something like that. Red Sox got the win for me in extra innings. Like I told you when I did my evening update there, Cincinnati and San Francisco, they were just teasing me by not scoring for a while. Oh, it gets into the 7th, the 8th inning or whatever, and it's still a 5-run game? Well, fuck you. We're just going to have this game go over the total anyway. It went over by 1 run, so thanks a lot for that one, guys. And then I got the easy win on the Houston Astros. Then we had the first 5 under in the Scooble. Who was Scooble up against? Snell. Scooble, Snell in that game. The game was 2-1 going into the bottom of the 4th. So it's like, okay, just have Scooble, the beast, the animal. Just have him give me a scoreless bottom of the inning here, and then we're going to get out of here with the win on that bet. No, he gives up a 3 spot, so fuck you, fuck me, I guess. But at least I was actually happy that the full game went over as well, because I was like, if the full game under still wins and I did have that option, I'm going to be even more pissed. But that didn't happen. So at least there was that. The Diamondbacks sucked. I don't know what to tell you. Zach Gallen walked 4 guys or something. They were still in the game until they brought in Ryan Nelson as the first relief man out of the bullpen. The first guy you want in to come in relief for your team on the season is Ryan Nelson. How is this guy even still employed? Like, as soon as you see that guy warming up, oh, this bet's going to lose. So fuck me, I guess. And then NBA, I mean, are you serious? With the NBA, the Indiana Pacers scored 169 points. They had 83 at halftime, and then they scored even more than that in the second half. They shot like 67 or 68% from the field, and they hit 27 three-pointers and shot like 64% from 3. How is that at all predictable? When does that ever happen? It was the most ridiculous shooting performance maybe in the history of the sport. It was like a fucking, not even an all-star game, because an all-star game is just dunks. How does a team hit that many three-pointers, have that many shots that go in? It's just insane. That game was just completely dead from the start. Maybe I should have lost it anyway, but that is such an outlier performance that how can you even you can't even look at that game at all and think anything about that game at this point. I mean, it's just so ridiculous. Then we had, Texas Tech. I mean, that was a loser. I think I was right about all the other games as far as who covered. Maybe I didn't get Maryland right, I guess. But the other games covered. Florida, by the way, lost one of their starters in that game. So we'll see how that goes moving forward. I have Texas Tech in my bracket beating Florida, but I'm not too I'm not too confident about Texas Tech in that one, even though Florida does have the injury there. Texas Tech playing the later game and coming off an overtime game and having to play two days later. Yeah, I don't know. They're going to have to get McMillan back in there, man, because he still didn't play. But Arkansas was just hitting a ridiculous amount of their shots early. They hit like their first 4 or 5 three-pointers. Texas A&M started out the game 0 for 7 from 3, and I think they were like 2 for 13 from the field to start the game. Texas A&M in a massive hole. But then they did wind up having the biggest comeback in Sweet 16 history. They were down 16 points with 10 minutes to go, and they were still down 13 with like 4.5 to go. I didn't even watch the end of it. I'm like, this isn't going to happen. And then they wound up taking it to overtime, and then they actually had a 4-point lead in overtime. So if they maintained that lead and it went to intentional fouls at the end, they actually still had a chance to cover that number. Unbelievable. But that game, just bad shooting early on from Texas Tech, good shooting from Arkansas early on in the game. You were just never going to get that cover in that game, even though it still became kind of close to happening. NHL, I don't know what to tell you about NHL, man. I had a really good season for most of the season in the NHL, and recently it has completely gone in the tank. I did mention that Philly game yesterday. I kind of wanted to get off of it because Philly fired their coach in the middle of the day after I'd already made the bet on Montreal. I mean, what can you even do about that? Like, you have an unexpected, like, huge spark to the team, middle of the day. I mean, it's not even like NBA where it's like, oh, in the NBA you want to wait to see what the lineups are going to be. No, it was just unexpectedly we fired our coach. So there's nothing you could even do about that except hedge back on the other side, which I just decided to not do. And I guess I should have. I should have gotten away from that one. That was, if I knew that was going to happen in the morning, wouldn't have made that play. And then we had, what was it? Oh, Calgary. I mean, Calgary was kind of in that game for most of it, and it just still didn't go my way. So I'm sick of this. We got to turn it around, man. I'm down on the year, obviously. I cannot have 2 losing years in a row after having 16 out of 18 winning years or whatever it is, or 15 to 17. I forget how many years have I been doing this. I don't even remember. My only losing year before last year, as I've mentioned before on the show, was my worst year, which was 2015, which came off a great 2014, which was especially good in baseball. Baseball tends to be one of my better sports. It's my second best to NBA over, I think, the entire span. And baseball just came back. And I do pretty well in the NBA playoffs. So hopefully that is going to be what we get here today. I'm not playing any hockey today. And not because I'm afraid of it, because I just don't see any spots that I like. I'm going to have a bunch of plays, though. I'm going really crazy with baseball. Maybe I shouldn't be, but, I mean, maybe I need to restrain myself. I need to put myself in handcuffs, tie myself to the bed or something so that I don't make this many baseball plays. I have no self-control, obviously. I got 3 baseball plays, 1 college basketball play, 2 NBA plays today. Again, I have no restraint. Let's talk about college basketball here. We'll go in order of the board here again, even though it's out of order as far as when these games are being played. Michigan and Auburn. Auburn's up from an 8.5-point favorite to a 9-point favorite here. I apologize. I'm trying to my monitor's like I don't know how my monitor's kind of off kilter here. I'm trying to fix that. All right. Auburn up from 8.5 to 9. Michigan looks like a public underdog. 54% of tickets and only 51% of the cash. So the public likes Michigan. Auburn seems to be the number 1 seed now, even though they're the number 1 overall seed, and they were the best team in college basketball almost the entire season until they lost a few SEC games that didn't totally matter, really, down the stretch. Now the public is off of them, and I think Auburn, kind of a sleeping giant right now, and this is my one play. I'm going to lay the 8.5 with Auburn in this one. I like it. They're the better team. I think Michigan, time is going to catch up to Michigan, okay? Michigan, even though I know I've been saying, well, Michigan, because they played so many close games this year in a competitive Big Ten conference, they're battle-tested. Yes, they are, but they also look better than they actually are because they won an inordinate amount of close games, man. They actually had a negative scoring differential on the season and still had a winning record. I think they had the best conference record in NCAA history for a team with a losing scoring differential. So, something's got to give here, man. And Ken Baum will tell you that, I don't have it up right now, but he will tell you that Michigan is definitely an overrated team because they've won so many close games. They look better than they actually are statistically or analytically. I know they keep winning, but, I mean, let's face it. That UC San Diego game, they got away with it. The refs, Michigan almost still blew that game, and the refs really helped them. I mean, the refs fouled out one of UC San Diego's starters with 7 minutes to go, and then they fouled out another one of them in the final minute. Golden stepped over the line on one of Michigan's foul shots, which, I mean, I know they're usually not going to call that. I'm fine with them not calling that, but just technicality, he did. And then Michigan, their game-winning shot, I actually think the shooter stepped out of bounds as well. So a lot of reffing decisions that went Michigan's way in that one, and they barely escaped. Then they got a Texas A&M team that just kind of blew the game. Texas A&M, I mean, they are not a good scoring team, not a good shooting team, and they could go cold at any given time, really, even though they are a decent inside presence. They just kind of fell apart. But now I think this is where Michigan, this is where they run into it, man, where they're actually facing a team that is better than they are. This is being played in Atlanta as well, which I think is going to help Auburn as well because, of course, it's way closer to Auburn's campus. Auburn up in northern Alabama. Probably they're going to have a lot of fans coming over for this. It's not a long drive for them. Michigan further away, and Michigan has had more travels. I believe Michigan played in Denver to start the tournament here. The first couple of games they were in Denver, so now they're coming out of high elevation after those 2 games, coming down to face Auburn here. And Auburn was only in, where were they? In Lexington, Kentucky, I think. So Auburn really has not gone that far, so a lot less travel for Auburn. I believe maybe that means they've stayed in the same. No, I guess they're going from the Eastern to the Central. No, they're staying in the Eastern because they're going to Atlanta. What am I saying? So they're staying in the Eastern time zone as well, so no time zone difference. So a lot of advantages for Auburn here, in addition to the fact that I think they're flying under the radar. Michigan also likes to play fast, so they did have a pacing mismatch in their first 2 games against UC San Diego and Texas A&M. They both like to play slow. Although Michigan actually did fall into a slower paced game against UC San Diego and a little bit against A&M as well. Auburn is not a slow paced team. Auburn kind of plays at any tempo they kind of prefer, so they're probably going to get a faster paced game in this one, which Michigan wants, but that means Michigan doesn't have the pacing edge here really, because they don't play really at a different pace than their opponent, and this will be the first time that that's the case in this tournament as well. Again, I think Michigan, I don't want to say the clock is going to strike midnight because they're not really a Cinderella, but I think this is where it ends here. The public, again, they like Michigan here. I think part of the reason is Michigan kind of has that name recognition around them, that history where they tend to do fairly well in the tournament, or pretty well, really. But this is a new Michigan. They're kind of they're like a rebuilt Michigan team, and I know they have a really experienced tournament coach now in Dusty May, although Bruce Pearl is more experienced than he is. I mean, Bruce Pearl has been here and done that for a long time, even though May has been to the Final Four. I think Pearl also has been to the Final Four. I would imagine May obviously has fewer years under his belt, so you are getting the more experienced coach still with Bruce Pearl. Michigan, again, their roster construction this year is new as of this year, whereas Auburn's got a pretty senior-laden team, or a pretty experienced team, upperclassmen-laden team, and guys that have played with each other for multiple years in a row now. So Auburn does have the experience edge here as well. So I do like all of that. And Auburn, I think, continuing to play with a bit of a chip on their shoulder because they got ousted in the first round last year. And Auburn hasn't looked like world beaters in this tournament yet, which has them flying under the radars. I just think they kind of sleepwalked through that first game against Alabama State. And then the game against Creighton was beating them close to halftime, and Auburn kind of woke up in that game and wound up winning the game anyway by double digits. But if Auburn finally is focused for a full game, and maybe they will be finally in the Sweet 16, I think they should be able to do it. And the other thing I was going to say is that the public, part of the reason why they're on Michigan, I think, is because Michigan just beat Texas A&M, and people pretty much remember that Texas A&M was one of the teams that beat Auburn down the stretch, one of the last games of the regular season. But remember, Auburn already had the division or the conference clinched at that point. They were already the conference 1 seed, the winner in the conference, and they're having to go out on the road to face Texas A&M, and they had Alabama up next in their home finale. So that was a sandwich spot. I played Texas A&M in that game back when things were a little bit better for me. That was one of my wins. So there were reasons why Texas A&M was in a good spot in that one, and Auburn was not in a good spot. I don't think that that's the case here. I like Auburn. We're going to lay the points with Auburn there. Total in this one's up from 152 to 154. The public likes the over in this one, but I'm not sure that they're wrong in this case. 76% tickets, 78% of the cash coming in on the over. I mean, if you're going to get both teams actually starting to play fast, whereas both teams, well, Michigan really, I would say not both teams, but Michigan has kind of played slower games so far in the tournament here. Even though the public is on the over, they might actually not have this one wrong. Ole Miss is playing Michigan State. Ole Miss has gotten here after an upset of Iowa State. This game is in Atlanta as well. Michigan State is coming down from Cleveland, I believe, and Ole Miss was playing, where were they playing? I don't even know. I can look real quickly because I kind of like to see what the travel spot is. They were playing, was it Wichita? Let me see. No, it was Milwaukee. I don't know. I mean, not a huge travel edge for either team here. I don't think Michigan State, I guess, is having a little bit less travel coming from Cleveland. Both teams kind of coming from the Midwest. Well, I don't know if Cleveland is considered the Midwest, but to come down here. So no real advantage one way or the other. The location actually is closer to Ole Miss because we are playing in the South. So that might be one edge for Ole Miss. Michigan State's down from 4 to 3.5, but they do have some money coming in on them, it looks like. After an initial move going against them, I think some money has come back on Michigan State here. So it was either a false move initially or so the false move, by what I mean by that is that the professionals come in and they bet the side that they actually don't want to try to get the number to move because they have respect with the bookmakers. Then they'll come back and actually fire their actual bet on the other side. I don't know if that's what happened here or not. But Michigan State does have 67% and taking 71% of the cash coming in on them. So it looks like the money has come back. The line was down to 2.5, 3, and now it's back up to 3.5. I don't know if I necessarily disagree with the Michigan State side, even though I've been saying I don't think Michigan State's going to win the championship. I mean, they were one of those unranked preseason teams. It was the two of them were them and St. John's, and I said history is very much against these teams winning the championship. Michigan State, they were able to get here. Have had an easy go of it, though, man. So Michigan State is the less battle-tested of these two teams in the tournament. Michigan State only beat Bryant and New Mexico and weren't really that impressive in either of those. Although the fact that they weren't impressive might have them flying under the radar a little bit. But Ole Miss has faced a much more difficult slate of opponents here as they face North Carolina and Iowa State. So Ole Miss, I think, has actually faced two better teams than both teams that Michigan State has faced. So Ole Miss has faced the more difficult competition so far. So you can say that at least. So it does mean Ole Miss is coming off two straight upsets, although the North Carolina game was only like a 1-point upset. But they are coming off two straight upsets. Iowa State, we know they were without Keyshawn Gilbert, which definitely hurt them. And Ole Miss did have a huge shooting game in that game. They had ridiculous shooting percentages, well over 50% from the field and from three in that game. So you got to expect a little bit of regression from Ole Miss. And then as far as the coaching is concerned, both teams have good coaches, but obviously you got to give the edge to Tom Izzo. And again, I would give the edge to Bruce Pearl in the Auburn game, by the way, if that wasn't clear. Izzo against Beard. Beard is a good coach as well, though. So it's not maybe as much of a coaching mismatch as people may think. Ole Miss actually probably has the more experienced team at the very least than Michigan State does, as Michigan State kind of came from out of nowhere this year. And I guess the other thing that I will say, the one major negative for Ole Miss here, though, besides the fact that I think they have the lesser coach, is that Ole Miss, they're not a good rebounding team, really. They don't get a lot of offensive rebounds, so Michigan State is probably going to have an edge there as far as being able to clean up the glass. So we will see how that game goes. Certainly not going to play it. And then we move to the Midwest Regional, as that was the South Regional. We had the East and the West last night. The Midwest, we got Purdue and Houston. Houston up from 7 to 8 with juice. So money is coming in on Houston. I do agree with that side. 75% of tickets, 84% of the cash coming in on Houston. I agree with it. Houston, I mean, they are the battle-tested team now, as they had a big game against Gonzaga in the second round. As I had said, Gonzaga way better than what their seeding would indicate. Ken Palm's analytics, they're a top 10 team in the country, and they're an 8 seed, and they play fast, and Houston likes to play slow, so that was a very difficult game for Houston. Houston mostly had control of that game, though, from wire to wire, but Gonzaga put together a late run and made it really close, although Houston was winning most of that game by a pretty good margin. But still, because it got close, Houston was battle-tested. They actually were better in that game than the final score would suggest. And Houston is the better team than Purdue here, man. I mean, Houston, they just have more balance than Purdue does. I mean, Purdue, without Zach Edey this year, yeah, Purdue has very experienced guard play, but Purdue has had some issues on the interior this year without having that big man in there. Even though they do have experienced guards, Houston also does. Houston has a lot of experience. And Houston, they're usually that really good slow down, grind you, like defensive team, which they still are. But this year they can shoot better as well. So Houston, probably this is the best iteration of this Houston team under Kelvin Sampson. And both these teams, of course, have experience. Sampson against Painter. Both teams a lot of experience. I think I would probably give the coaching edge to Sampson, though, even though the two coaches kind of both have similar issues where they tend to just have like a lapse somewhere in the tournament most years when they're in the tournament. So that's just the case. Painter does have more experience being in the tournament because he's been around with like a very good roster for a longer period of time. But this Houston team is the better team. They're more battle-tested. Purdue really has not done anything so far. I mean, Purdue beat a 13 seed and a 12 seed. They beat High Point, and High Point was kind of hanging around in that game. And then Purdue blasted McNeese, but McNeese pretty much shot their wad, I think, in that big emotional upset of Clemson. And then they just really quick turnaround time. They pretty much had nothing left after that. So Purdue has not really been tested in this tournament yet. So I do like Houston, and I do lean to the under. I was considering playing the under. The only issue I have with the under is that both these teams are offensively efficient, even though both teams do like to play slow. So you're probably going to get a slow pace here, but Purdue is very, very good at hitting threes when they take them. They have a very high percentage. Houston also does. It's just that these teams don't take that many threes, but they can hit a lot of them. So that is a little bit worrisome, although Houston does defend against the three really well. Purdue, maybe not quite as much. Houston definitely does. Purdue is actually a better offensive team than defensive team this year. So Houston is the better defense, although you're having to lay points with the better defense. But in a tournament game like this, I do think Houston's the right side. I still lean to the under, but the 3-point shooting percentages give me some hesitation. The total's down from 134 to 132 with 71% of tickets on the over and only 65% in the cash. So public likes the over. I don't like it as much, obviously. So I definitely lean to the under. I mean, that was, if I was going to make another play in this college basketball slate, it would be the under in this game. I just have some hesitations there, so I won't do it. But that's what I think about that game. And then we have Kentucky and Tennessee. We get an SEC matchup in the Sweet 16 because there are so many SEC teams in the tournament. Tennessee is down from 5.5 to 4.5. And to me, it looks like there are professionals disagreeing on this game on the side. I think some professionals like Kentucky and some like Tennessee, and that probably also means that some like the over and some like the under because Kentucky plays fast. They're a good offensive team, not as good a defensive team. So this is a classic matchup where if you like Kentucky, probably that correlates to the over. If you like Tennessee, they're a slow-paced defensive team, and they're not as good offensively. So if you like Tennessee, you probably like the game to go under. And that's also why the total is kind of up there in no man's land in the middle, somewhere between a slow pace and a fast paced game. Although it is kind of more on the lower side, though, I will say. Probably because it's a tournament game and because Tennessee is the better team, so they might win out pacing wise. Tennessee's down from 5.5 to 4.5 here with 54% of tickets, 56% of the cash coming in on them. So the money's slightly on the Tennessee side. My initial reaction to this was I would agree with the Tennessee side. I think they're the more complete team here. I mean, Kentucky is still without Jackson Robinson. They are a very erratic team. I mean, they can beat anybody in the country when they're at their best, but they can also lose to pretty much anybody on any given day as well. So Kentucky is a big-time wild card. Tennessee, very much more predictable. Like, you know what you're going to get out of Tennessee. You're going to get a slow defensive battle, basically. It's probably going to be a fairly close game. So if you do like Tennessee, maybe laying those points seems a little bit dicey because it's probably going to be a lower scoring game, but that is probably still the way that I would lean here because I think Tennessee is the better team and will be able to control the pace here. And it is, well, I don't think revenge matters in the tournament, obviously. Both teams are going to be motivated to try to win the game, but Tennessee has lost both regular season matchups to Kentucky this year. And I think at least one of those games also wound up being at a slow pace, too. The one that I lost on Tennessee in one of them. I think I won on Kentucky in the other one. So I think the one at Kentucky, I think Tennessee was in a bad spot. And then I lost on Tennessee in the one. Or no, I lost on Tennessee at Kentucky. And I think I won on Kentucky at Tennessee, I'm pretty sure, is what it was. It was a bad spot for Tennessee. And then Tennessee had a really bad shooting game in the second game at Kentucky. They were like 3 for 18 from three-point range. I know Tennessee doesn't shoot that well, but they're going to shoot better than that. So I think that was a bit of an outlier. So you should see Tennessee at least shoot better than that in this game. And because Tennessee has lost 2 games to Kentucky, Tennessee is going to be the team that has all the adjustments to make. I mean, if you're Kentucky, what do you have to adjust? You already won both games, so you don't have anything to adjust. And Kentucky also, I think, has the coaching disadvantage here, as they're kind of a newly built Kentucky team here with Mark Pope taking over, and he's up against Rick Barnes. And I know Rick Barnes, tons of tournament experience, but he's never made the Final Four, but we're not there yet in the tournament. This is just the Sweet 16. And this Tennessee team with a lot of these same players and with the same coach, they were all here last year, and they made the Elite Eight last year, and they're going to try to take the next step. So Tennessee has experience being in this exact position and winning this game. So I think the experience edge does loom large in this game as well. So I do like Tennessee in that game, and therefore I probably would lean to the under as well, but maybe a little bit dicey there. And that'll do it for the college basketball. Let's go to NHL. There's not a whole lot going on with the NHL today. Not a whole lot of games that really interest me either. Just some games with huge spreads here. I mean, Vancouver and Columbus, somewhat of an interesting game, I guess, because Columbus has actually flipped from a 102 dog to a minus 118 favorite. So some money, I think, has driven that line to Columbus being a favorite. But Vancouver has 57% of tickets and 72% of the cash. So the cash is coming in on Vancouver. And both these teams are still fighting to make the playoffs. So both teams are going to be motivated here. So it's an interesting matchup. Vancouver coming off a couple of wins in a row here. They do have Winnipeg next, but I don't know they're going to overlook any of these games. They did crush Winnipeg at home the last time they played Winnipeg, which is a huge win for Vancouver. But because these teams are both fighting for the playoffs, I don't think they can really overlook anybody at this point. Columbus is also coming up beating the Islanders, so both teams coming up beating the Islanders. For Columbus, that broke a long loss streak for them, though. So I think the fact that they had that bad loss streak and they finally killed that momentum, I think that's going to help them. And the fact they've had time off, I don't think is going to be a momentum stopper, because that win to end their loss streak was really the momentum stopper, in my opinion. So I think this extra rest will probably help them, and that's probably why the line has moved to Columbus, because they are the more rested team there. I probably would lean that way. Not a strong lean, though. New Jersey is at Winnipeg. Winnipeg's a pretty big favorite, though. This is an interesting matchup, but Winnipeg's up from minus 166 to minus 178. 69% of tickets, 86% of the cash coming in on Winnipeg. Winnipeg also very, very good at home. I mean, they're one of the best teams in hockey, but they also have one of the best home records in hockey. They're home wreckers, baby. New Jersey, not a whole lot to see here. I mean, they broke a loss streak themselves by beating Chicago in a fairly easy win. This is a bigger game for them, obviously. Both these teams were already pretty much settled in as far as they're going to make the playoffs. So there's no real advantage one way or the other there. Winnipeg is coming off a big overtime win over Washington, though. So they're coming off a bigger game. So that might mean the spot, just for that reason, the spot might be a little bit better for New Jersey, but the money is definitely disagreeing with that. JC, what's up? Thanks for hanging out this morning, man. So I do think the spot might be slightly better for New Jersey there. I won't touch it. And then I do also like the Rangers. Anaheim, I mean, they're not technically eliminated, but they got pretty much nothing to play for, man. They know they're not going to make the playoffs, so they're playing out the stretch, and they're coming off blasting my Boston Bruins, who are not only dead, but dead to me. No, not really. The Bruins are actually the only team that has a consistent fan base in Boston. They're the only team where the fan base is really not fair weather. It's the least fair weather. Everybody goes to Bruins games, no matter how much they suck. Everybody wants to just go out and see guys brawl on the ice, pretty much. I mean, this is fucking Boston, man. You get the drunk, fat, bearded guys all going out to see Boston, to see the Bruins, I mean. Anaheim coming off that ridiculous win, 6-2. Probably feeling pretty good about that win. Yeah, sure, they might be focused on this pretty good Rangers team, but the Rangers certainly are the team that needs this game. I mean, the Rangers are like 1 or 2 points out of the playoffs right now. They need to win. They've lost 4 of their last 5 games. They started a road trip and lost to the Kings. This is a much more winnable game. They've had 2 days off, and they've already acclimated to the Pacific time zone. So I think this is a much better spot for them now. 2 days off, accustom yourselves to the Pacific time zone there. Go out and play a much easier team to beat. Step down in class. I think it makes sense. I'm not going to play it. I'm tempted. This would be the closest to being a play for me on the hockey board today. The Rangers, I do lean to that side, up from minus 150 to minus 155. 57% of tickets, 65% of the cash. So the money is coming in on the Rangers. Anna, what's up? Thanks for hanging out. Let's go to NBA here. I do have two NBA plays. One is in the first game up, and this is based on need. So I think you're getting a needier team as an underdog here at home. I'm going to play the Detroit Pistons, one of my favorite teams over the last few years to play as an underdog, man. 2 years ago, they were my favorite as they seem to win every single time I played them. Basically, I was on every single one of their wins that year because they didn't have many wins. Last year, didn't really play them as much. This year, I've played them more than I did last year, and it's worked out more often than it hasn't. Yes, I know I'm fading Cleveland here. The market read looks good on this, though. Cleveland, I wish I got the 7.5. There is no 7.5. This line's all the way down to 5, by the way. So, again, I know we're missing the best number. 7.5 would have been a lot better because 7 is a key number in basketball. 7 is that 3-score threshold where teams stop intentionally fouling. That is true, but I like getting the points with the Pistons here, man. I think the spot is correct for it. The market read is all over the Pistons here. Cleveland is obviously going to be public because the public, obviously they have the best record in the NBA, except for maybe Oklahoma City. I forget. Cleveland's 69% of the tickets on them, but 53% of the cash coming in on the Detroit side. So Detroit is getting the bigger money. The line is reversed, moved against Cleveland. And Cleveland, they don't have a whole lot to play for at this point, man. They've already clinched their division. My Boston Celtics are so far behind Cleveland right now that Cleveland is nearly wrapped up the 1 seed at this point. So they really do not have a whole lot to play for. And this scheduling spot is just crazy. Not only are they in a back-to-back as they beat San Antonio at home yesterday, that was a return home spot for Cleveland. They'd been on the road since March 18th, playing mostly road games recently. One home game, and then they have to turn around and go back out to Detroit. I know it's not a huge travel spot going just from Cleveland to Detroit, but still you have to go back out on the road again and face Detroit. And then after this, you got the Clippers, New York. I know Detroit's going to be in the playoffs as well, so it is a fairly big game, but it's a bigger game for Detroit, man. Cleveland, again, they don't really need to win this game. And the travel spot is just crazy. Not only is it a back-to-back, it's a third game in 4 days, fourth game in 6 days, fifth game in 8 days, and it's also a 6th game in 10 days, actually a 7th game in 11 days, and it's actually an 8th in 13 days, and all of those are in different cities, except that first one was at home, and the most recent one was at home. So it is the 7th and 11 all in different cities. Crazy bad travel spot for Cleveland. Detroit, the spot sets up better for them. They're just staying at home, so no travel at all for them. They've been at home for a couple of games now. Both teams beat San Antonio in their last game, but Detroit also has 2 days off. I don't think that's going to kill their momentum. Plus, with Cleveland coming into your house, you know you're going to pay attention to Cleveland. And Detroit is actually trying to fight to get one of the top 4 seeds in the conference right now. They are only like a game or two out of the 4 seed right now, so they actually have a chance to host a playoff series, which is just insane to think about, but they're playing for that, so they have more to play for. And they're the home underdog, and they're in the way better situational spot. So give me Detroit plus the points. If you want to play the +5, I will not be mad at you for that. RIP Arizona. I know I'm a big-time hater of Duke. Can't stand them, and I wanted Arizona to win that game. Plus, I don't have Duke in my bracket, and a lot of people are picking Duke, so it'd be helpful if Duke got knocked out. Unfortunately, that did not happen. Arizona's a pretty solid team. It was a close game. Arizona did cover the number, but just not good enough, unfortunately. And the game wound up being played at a faster pace, too. It was a very high-scoring game, which is really what Arizona wants, more so than what Duke wants, although Duke can play those higher-scoring games, but still, I think it was actually the pace of that game actually was more advantageous to Arizona, and they still didn't win. All right, what else we got? The Clippers, I'll mention because I think they're in a bad spot, as they just won on the road against the Knicks. That was a big win. And they played OKC the game before that. They played a bunch of big games in a row, actually. They beat Cleveland. They beat Memphis. Played Oklahoma City to within 2 points. Then they went out on the road and beat the Knicks. Now they face the Brooklyn Nets. And then they got Cleveland again up next. So I think this is a bad spot for the Clippers. The only issue is that the Clippers, they can't exactly take their foot off the gas if they want to keep playing for playoff positioning, because they're still trying to play for playoff positioning. I'm pretty sure they're actually still trying to I think they're still playing for like maybe a home series or something. I forget what the deal is with the Clippers, but Maybe it's not big enough of a deal that a bad spot like this is going to be a spot where you should lay a ton of points with the Clippers. I don't think you should. Plus, the Clippers can easily win this game without covering because they're a double-digit favorite here. So I do lean to taking the points with the Nets in this one. I think it's basically a sandwich spot for the Clippers. Nets really don't have anything left to play for, but it does look like even though the line has been driven up from 10.5 to 12.5 on the Clippers, it does look like more of the cash might be coming in on the Nets at this point. Well, not more of the cash, but the cash percentage, let's say, is in favor of the Nets with 74% of the tickets, but only 69% of the cash on the Clippers. That indicates to me that the public is on them, but some of the bigger bettors are taking the Nets, even though the cash percentage is still on the side of the Clippers. So that means that some of the bigger bets are on the Nets, and because the cash percentage is still majority on the Clippers, that means that some of the bigger bets, and it's going to be helpful to the books if the Nets win, and some of the bigger bets are on the Nets there. So I do lean to taking the points with the Nets. After last night's debacle, I don't know that I want to play a dead team at all, but it is the right spot to look towards the Nets in that game. Then we got the Knicks in Milwaukee. I actually am going to play this game. I'm stupid and probably I shouldn't, but I'm going to play the Knicks at a pick'em in this game. I know Brunson still isn't back yet, but if Brunson does come back, he's supposed to be coming back in their next game, I think. And if he comes back, then I think that does set up a spot where you probably want to fade the Knicks because it's a reverse injured player theory spot. And when that star player comes back, he has to get used to playing again. The team has to get their chemistry back. They have to get used to playing again with him. So I don't think it's the greatest spot for them. But the Knicks are coming off an ugly loss at home by 13 points to the Clippers. I know it's a decent Clippers team, but now the Knicks get to go out on the road for a game. And I think if you have a bad loss at home like that, I think it does help to just forget about it, go out on the road, play some basketball. So I think that's what we're going to get here. Milwaukee, I mean, I know they've been an injured team for a while. They've been going in and out of injuries, but they're in a bad spot, in my opinion, because they're returning home from a road trip that they went out to the Pacific Coast and then into Elevation, and now they're coming out of Elevation with only 1 day off back to Milwaukee, and they've been away from home for 10 days, and I always say, when a team is away for that long, these guys have to balance playing basketball with their home life that they have to get back to, where they have stuff to do at home. I know the Knicks are a playoff team. Knicks have clinched a playoff spot, and the Bucks are actually behind them in the standings. So the Bucks debatably have a little bit more to play for here, but it's just such a bad spot in the return home spot that I think you got to fade them here. And I think the Knicks are in a much more positive bounce back spot here. So I like the Knicks here. I mean, we could look at the standings. I think both teams are going to make the playoffs kind of regardless of what happens here. But, I mean, the East is so bad. Both of these teams are obviously going to make the playoffs. The Bucks, they're not in danger of falling into the play-in games because they have a big edge there. Yes, it is true they could possibly get up ahead of the Pacers. They're 2.5 back of the Pacers to try to host a playoff spot, but that is kind of a gap there. So the Bucks are almost like settled into one of these like either the 5 or 6 at this point almost. So it's not like they have a ton to play for here, although the Knicks don't really either because the Knicks obviously have a big gap between them and the Celtics and between them and the Pacers. It's a decent gap. Knicks also, even if they fall to the 4, they're still going to host a playoff game, a playoff series, I mean. So as far as playoff positioning, I mean, both teams are kind of playing for it, but I don't think it's like front of mind for them. So I'm going to play the Knicks in this game. The line, the market read early looks like the money is going to come in on the Bucks, which I don't love, but I think it's a bad return home spot where you got to fade the Bucks here. Knicks down from 1 to a pick'em. You can find them at a straight-up pick'em price, and I'm going to do it. I will play the Knicks, even though they are without Brunson. I mean, this is still a pretty good Knicks team, and the Bucks, I mean, if you look at their injury situation here, you got Lillard. He's still going to be out, so they're still without him. Giannis is a game-time decision, but that is like always the case, so I don't think there's really going to be much of a change for the Bucks there. So, again, we'll see what happens. Minnesota hosting Phoenix. Phoenix got knocked out of the playoffs last year in a sweep at the hands of Minnesota, and Phoenix has lost 3 more games to Minnesota this season, so Phoenix can't even get the playoff revenge here, man. They've lost every game against Minnesota going back to the start of the playoffs last year. 7 losses in a row, so now it's septuple revenge, baby. I mean, at what point does revenge stop mattering? If the T-Wolves clearly just dominate this matchup against the Suns, but I still would take the points with the Suns in this one, man, because I think they're going to be more motivated. T-Wolves are up from 6.5 to 7, 71% of tickets, only 64% of the cash. So the T-Wolves are public. They're laying a lot at home. They're coming back from that tough game against Indiana, coming back home. So I don't know. Maybe it is a bounce back spot for them because it wasn't really a road trip. It was only a one game, a single game, like road trip out there. Phoenix actually lost horribly at home to the Celtics, a 30-point loss, and now they're starting a road trip or at least going on the road. So again, kind of like with the Knicks, I think that's more of a positive spot when you have an embarrassing loss at home. One of the better things for you is actually to leave home and go out on the road and just forget about that. Don't listen to what the media is saying and just focus on basketball in this case. So I think Phoenix, they are probably the right side here. Both these teams are fighting to get into the playoffs, though, or for playoff positioning, I should say. Phoenix is fighting to get in entirely, so I think they have more to play for as they're fighting just for one of those play-in spots there. And Minnesota is fighting to stay out of the play-in. So both these teams do have something to play for that reason, but Phoenix trying to get in at all and having that much revenge on their mind, being in the slightly better spot, and being the team that's getting a ton of points, I would lean to taking the points with Phoenix, but I'm not going to do it. Now let's go to NBA, where again, like I said, MLB, where I have no self-control. Colorado and Tampa, I think, are the only teams that didn't play yesterday that are playing today, I believe. Do we have any teams that still haven't played yet after that? Cleveland and Kansas City played yesterday. Yeah, this might be the only two teams that didn't play yesterday, Colorado and Tampa. Interesting. I mean, Pepio is the way better pitcher, and I think in a limited amount of playing time, he does have good numbers against Colorado. So obviously, Tampa's going to be a big favorite there. I mean, Colorado's a terrible team, and Tampa's got the better starting pitcher there. So I'm not going to pay attention to that game. I forget what I'm even playing. Let's just go to my plays, man. Let's not belabor it too much, even though I tend to have an opinion on most baseball games because I go in, dive into the matchups. I'm going to go against my Boston Red Sox, even though I'm wearing their hat. They didn't wear their hat yesterday, and they won for me in a dramatic game in extra innings. Big win for the Red Sox yesterday. Crochet didn't do bad in his start, but it was a close game. It was 2-2, I think, down the stretch, and then the Red Sox wound up winning with Wilyer Abreu hitting his second home run of the game, hit a 3-run home run to break the tie in the ninth inning. Big win for the Red Sox. But now I think the edge kind of flips the other way here in this game, in my opinion. And I think you're going to get some value on the Texas Rangers because you're looking at a pitching matchup here of Houck against Leiter. And everybody's going to say, well, wait a minute. Houck had a good season last year, and he was an all-star last year. And he's up against this Leiter guy who is, I believe, Jack Leiter is his name, right? Jack Leiter, Jake Leiter. I believe he is Mark Leiter's son, I want to say. And Mark Leiter, I believe, is Al Leiter's brother. Do I have all that right? I think I do. So I think that's the Leiter family tree there. But people are going to look at this and see, well, Leiter did pitch a little bit last year, which was his first. Those were his first appearances as a major league starter last year, and it was a mixed bag. He had some really bad games, and he had some pretty decent games. I think I won and lost on him in a couple of those spots last year. But now that he has kind of a partial season under his belt, people are going to look at those numbers and say his numbers sucked, and he's up against an all-star pitcher, and the Red Sox won yesterday. So why wouldn't I want to play the Red Sox in a game where the line is very close? And the money is actually coming in on the Red Sox, and I disagree with it completely. Red Sox at a minus 113 favorite, 64% of the cash, 54% of the tickets on Texas. So actually the public slightly looks like they're coming in on Texas. I really don't understand why they would be. I would expect them to be coming in on the guy who is the all-star starter. But here's the problem with this. Houck has bad numbers against the Texas Rangers, man. The Rangers in 62 career at-bats have a 16-7 strikeout walk ratio, so that's not great for Houck, but also a 290 batting average and 911 OPS. Very high OPS. He's allowed 4 home runs to them as well, though 2 of them are Garcia. But still, this Texas team, most of them, they've pretty much all seen him before, and they kind of destroy Houck. And Houck also has not done well at Texas. He's made 2 starts in his career at Texas, which were both, I think, last year and or the year before that. And one of those games, he didn't make it past 4 innings and he walked 4 guys, and only allowed 2 runs in that one. The other game, he allowed 6 earned runs and 2 home runs, I think, in like 5 innings. So he has a nearly 9 ERA in his couple of starts at this ballpark as well. I think they were both at Texas's new ballpark. I don't know if one of them was at Arlington, but still the old ballpark in Arlington. But I mean, I think they're similar dimensions and whatever. It's more of a hitter's park, so I do not like that at all. And for Jack Leiter, I do like this because Leiter has never been seen before by the Red Sox. And you know what I always say, when you have a young pitcher who actually does have good stuff, and Leiter does, his strikeout numbers were decent last year, so it was the walks that he really needs to get under control. He had way too many walks last year. His strikeouts per 9 weren't that bad. So when you have a guy that has decent stuff, pretty good stuff, and the opposing hitters have never seen him before, it's an early edge to the starting pitcher because the hitters have to adjust. They don't know what to expect from this pitcher. They haven't seen him in a live game environment. So I think this is a pretty big pitching advantage for the Texas Rangers. And then if you're going to go full game, you got to make sure that the bullpen scenario is up to snuff here. So you look at what the bullpens did yesterday. The Red Sox used the back end of their bullpen yesterday. They used Aroldis Chapman and Slayton to finish off the game, even though they used 1 fewer reliever than the Rangers did. I don't think that there's a huge difference between these two teams. Plus, that was the first game for both of these teams, so both of these teams came into that game with rested pens. So I think the fact that the Rangers used 1 more reliever and Armstrong only threw 5 pitches, so it's not even out of the realm of possibility they'd use him again in this game. So I think it's kind of a wash, even though the Red Sox probably do have the better of the 2 bullpens. I'll still just go full game on this because you can get Texas as the underdog. If you want to go first 5 innings, the Texas Walker Rangers, yeah. If you want to go first 5 innings, I don't mind that either, and just go with the starting pitching matchup. I think that's fine as well. Yeah, Toad Leiter. But I also think the Red Sox may even be in a little bit of a letdown after the way that they won that game, and it could even wind up being a little bit of a, I don't think a zigzag is really a thing in the MLB, because it's not really a sport where it's like, oh, the whole team is going to adjust strategically. It's really just more about the matchups in the MLB. But I do think maybe the mental edge is a little bit on the side of Texas coming into that one. So I like that. Let's see what else we got going on. I will point out Dylan Cease, the money's coming in on him for San Diego, but his numbers are actually not as good against Atlanta as Ronaldo Lopez's are against San Diego. So Lopez actually has better numbers against San Diego. And Atlanta's still looking for their revenge here because I think San Diego won the game yesterday, even though Sale pitched for the Braves. So Atlanta's still looking for that playoff revenge. So I don't like the San Diego side as much as the money does there, so I'm not going to play that game, but I just figured I would point that one out. And then we do have Mets in Houston. I mean, Hunter Brown is the better pitcher over Tyler Megill, even though the money looks like it's coming in on the Mets there. I've never really liked Megill. I don't think he's that good. Brown has been a mixed bag, but since he's like kind of gotten accustomed to playing in the majors, he's been better, and I think the Mets don't have a whole lot of experience facing Brown, so I do kind of like the Houston Astros in that one still. That one's not going to be a play for me. And then shockingly in the Cubs in Arizona, Jameson Taillon, who I always make fun of because he sucks, he actually has good numbers against Arizona, so there is that at least. So his numbers against Arizona are pretty good, and Merrill Kelly has been one of Arizona's better pitchers, but his numbers against the Cubs are slightly less good than that. So in that matchup, I think the starting pitching matchup does favor the Cubs to some degree in that game. Mets up from minus 127 to minus 142, though. So baseball, man, I'm looking at the matchups and disagreeing with the money in a lot of these cases. But I am going to play these late 2 games here, and if you know me, you probably know what I'm doing in this A's and Seattle game that's in Seattle. I think you know exactly what I'm doing here. We're going under. It's Seattle, baby. It's the most pitcher-friendly park in Major League Baseball. It's a cool late March day where that's where unders happen, man. In cool, rainy Seattle in March, in a ballpark that's already pitcher-friendly in weather conditions that are also good for pitching and not good for hitting. What's the temp going to be here? 51 and rainy. Yeah, let's go with it. I like the under in this one. Both these teams yesterday really did not have a lot of they didn't use a lot of their bullpen yesterday. It was a pretty clean game. 3 pitchers used out of the bullpen for the A's. By the way, hilarious that the A's, because they've moved out of Oakland temporarily to Sacramento, they're not called anything now. They're just called the Athletics. They're not the Oakland Athletics. They're not the Vegas Athletics yet. They're not the Sacramento Athletics. They're just the Athletics. They're just the A's. Oh, man. Obviously, the worst of these two teams. Mariners only used 2 of their relievers. A's used 3. So not really anything going on there as far as what the bullpens look like here. Starting pitching matchup, I think, is going to be kind of an under-the-radar matchup here with Jeffrey Springs. It's like, who the fuck is this guy? He's in his 30s. Like, nobody knows who this guy is. But if you look at his career stats, not really that bad. 3.39 ERA over his career. 1.25 whip is higher than I'd like to see it. I think he's made a lot of relief appearances because he doesn't have that many innings pitched per year, but he has a lot of strikeouts. Just the problem is he does walk too many guys, but his strikeout rate is high, so that's pretty good. It does tell you he has decent stuff. And against this Seattle offense that I don't think is really that imposing, 22 career at-bats. He's held them to a 227 average and 564 OPS. So Springs has done pretty well against this Mariners lineup here in the past. And the Mariners, of course, have Luis Castillo, who he's getting up there in age too, but he's been a good pitcher for them as well. I mean, he's been a guy who has good strikeout stuff for them. He's been good for them for a while. And, of course, he's facing one of the weakest lineups in baseball in the A's. They really can't hit. In 90 at-bats worth, because, of course, the A's have seen him a lot, but Castillo has really had their number as well. 29-5 strikeout walk ratio against him. He's held them to 233 average and 696 OPS, so those numbers are also good. So I think the starting pitching matchup looks good as far as how both these guys match up against these opposing hitters. It's a very pitcher-friendly environment. Yeah, so even though the game yesterday also went under, and maybe I should have looked that way because, by the way, Logan Gilbert pitched yesterday for Seattle. His numbers against Oakland are insane. Like, going into that game, I think Oakland was like 7 for 78 off of him lifetime or something like that. He absolutely dominates Oakland. So that was a game where maybe you wanted to look to Seattle and or the under. Unfortunately, I didn't do it. But I am going with the under in this game because this game, again, is a little bit more under the radar with a guy like Springs being one of the starters. People are not going to look at that. And then the last game, I am going to lay a big price and lay the run line with the Dodgers here to win the game by -1.5 because they are a huge favorite. Dodgers, and by the way, the total in that game does appear to be going downward. It was juiced to the over, and now it's gone down to a straight 7. 67% of the tickets are on the over in that one, and 72% of the cash on the over, but the numbers dropped down a little bit. Again, I like the under for all those reasons I stated. Detroit and LA, I know LA won yesterday, but they're the best team in baseball. They're up from -190 to -215. They're a stacked team, man. 82% of tickets, 84% of the cash coming in on LA. And I know LA used the back end of their bullpen yesterday, but I still don't really care because I think their bullpen is probably the superior bullpen too. And if you're going to lay a run line like this on a big favorite, you got to do it full game because otherwise you're laying like a half run in the first 5 innings and having to pay way more for it. So I prefer to just go full game and hope the Dodgers are going to get this done by multiple runs. They didn't do it yesterday. I know the Dodgers won a lot of one-run games last year, but I'm going to go with it in this one. I think this is a big, actually, pitching mismatch. Surprisingly, I would say that this is a weird situation. Remember, Jack Flaherty is back on the team that he started with last year. He was on Detroit last year until he got traded to the Dodgers. Then he won the World Series with the Dodgers, and now he's back on Detroit. So he won the World Series, and now he's going up against that team. And that means the Dodgers, they really know what Flaherty throws, man. They know his tendencies. So if you're a pitcher who just pitched for that team and now they're up against you, these hitters probably took batting practice at some points against Flaherty, man. So they know what he throws. So they're very familiar with Flaherty for that reason. Also, in actual game environments, these hitters have faced Flaherty a bit as well. 70 at-bats worth. His numbers are okay, but I think the advantage does go to the hitters. 271 batting average and 834 OPS. So the numbers are actually pretty good on the hitter side there. So Flaherty hasn't done that great against a very potent LA lineup here. And then on the other side, Yamamoto is making his first start of the season, I think. Or no, wait, did he start already? Yeah, he started in one of the Japan games, which I think is actually good because he didn't exert himself. They took him out after 72 pitches. He got a complete, not a complete game, got enough innings to qualify for a win. Although I think he didn't get the win in the game because I think it was tied. or whatever. Maybe they were losing the game, but he had a nice 5-inning performance, 4-1 strikeout walk ratio, only allowed 1 run on 3 hits. That's pretty good. Back in his home country. So I think the fact that he has a game under his belt is also an advantage to Yamamoto, and he looked good in that game, unlike last year where he really struggled in that first game. But he's off to the races, man. I mean, he had a good season last year in his first season, and now I know hitters have seen him before, so they're going to start being able to figure him out, and there's more tape on him. But guess who hasn't faced him before? Oh, yeah, that's right. The Detroit Tigers, except for Gleyber Torres here, is 0 for 4 off him lifetime, although with 2 walks. But other than that, the Tigers have never seen Yamamoto before, and he is a guy with good stuff. He is a very good pitcher and has a game under his belt, so all of those things are advantages to Yamamoto. The fact that these hitters have not seen him before. So for all those reasons, give me the LA Dodgers. That's going to do it for me. I know I'm playing too many baseball games, but my plays one more time today are Auburn in college basketball, -8.5. Detroit Pistons +6. Knicks, Pick'em. Texas Rangers +105. Oakland and Seattle in baseball under the total of 7, which I got at a little bit of a reduced juice price there. And the LA Dodgers run line -1.5. That's going to do it for me. Tower Gang Toad on Twitter. Patreon.com/Tower Gang. For the most offensive podcasts out there, you get bonus content from us. You get to have even more of the most offensive, hilarious podcasts out there. That's going to do it for me. Thanks, guys, for hanging out, and have a good one. Let's actually win for once, because this has been the worst run of my entire career, dude. I've never seen anything like this. I could throw fucking darts, and I'd be doing better than I am. Probably significantly better. It's absolutely ridiculous. Let's get back on the winning side, man. We need to make a big run here to turn this around. And I mean, at least law of averages kind of says that I'm going to have like a big heater soon. And it is very, very necessary. It needs to happen, man. This is bad. I almost want to quit. Let's get it done. Peace.